Modern Horizons 2 has just brought us an absolutely absurd Magic the Gathering card. And I have to say, I am incredibly pleased that this card exists.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The Magic Historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. My friends, we are here today to talk about a delightful and bizarre character from Magic the Gathering history. All right, so we're going to be talking about Asmore, whose full name is Asmoranomardicadaistinaculdacar. I totally just mispronounced it. Every time I say it, I mispronounce it. You have no idea how many times I've tried, but whatever. We're going to count that as a win. I'm just going to call her Asmore for the rest of the video. Do you know how difficult it is to talk about a character whose name you can't pronounce? And that's not just a problem for this video, because I literally recorded a lore video where we go over the entire history of this character. And it's a really awesome story. So that lore video will release later today over on my Fantasy Geographic channel. I'll leave a link at the end of the video, but trust me, you want to hear the whole story of Asmore. It's pretty wild. Asmore is crazy, all right? So let's talk about the card. Asmore is a 3/3 legendary human wizard. Now you'll notice, interestingly enough, her name is so long that there's literally no room for a casting cost on this card, which makes it unique in terms of this is the only Magic card that's ever been printed with a name that is so long that they had to find an alternate way to cast it to even be able to put the name on a card. So I like that. It's a oddity when it comes to Magic. It's singularly unique. So it doesn't have a casting cost. How do you get it into play? Well, the first line of abilities covers that. It says, as long as you've discarded a card this turn, you may pay hybrid 1 black or red to cast this spell. So basically, as long as you've pitched a card, for the rest of the turn, you'll be able to cast Asmore. Now, this doesn't let you cast her at instant speed. You don't cast her right when you discard the card. You just have to have discarded a card at some point during the turn to meet the condition of being able to cast her, but it still happens at sorcery speed and still during your main phase. And because she doesn't have a casting cost, they also had to put one of those little color reminder dots. So on the type line beside legendary creature, you can see right down here, right? Oh, my fingers disappeared. You can see right down there that there is a half black, half red little dot there, and that is to tell you officially for the game rules what colors Asmore is. So she's a red-black human wizard. Now, when Asmore enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a card named the Underworld Cookbook, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. This is amazing to me. This is literally 2 Magic cards that have been created specifically just from the flavor text of one card created in Alpha. So at the beginning of the game, like the very beginning of Magic, Asmore was just a name thrown on as part of some flavor text. And we will go over that card because we're actually going to cover every single card that is connected to Asmore, right? So basically just birthed from flavor text. And now we've got not only Asmore, but the Underworld Cookbook as well. So she lets you search for the Underworld Cookbook and you get it into your hand, which totally makes sense with the concept behind Asmore as well. And the other ability is sacrifice 2 foods. And that does 6 damage to basically, actually, it doesn't do 6 damage. It's a weird wording. Target creature deals 6 damage to itself, which to me is almost like the ghastly cooking that she does, okay? Because the thing about Asmore is she is the Underworld's preeminent chef. Now, she didn't plan to become the Underworld's preeminent chef. In fact, basically through her own recklessness, she ended up as the servant of a Lord of the Pit, a massive, gigantic, essentially demon lord that rules over its own little miniature hell plane, right? She ends up as a servant to him, specifically as a cook. Like if you're familiar with Lords of the Pit, right? The idea behind them in Magic mechanical terms is you have to sacrifice a creature to them every turn, or if you don't, the Lord of the Pit turns on you because they have insatiable hunger. So the idea behind Asmore is she's essentially the servant of a demon lord who has an insatiable hunger. And if she does not continue to feed that hunger, then she will end up facing the wrath of the Lord of the Pit and being his next meal, right? So she has to stay on top of her, game, feeding this Lord of the Pit for many, many years. It's an absolutely wild story as to how she gets trapped by this Lord of the Pit into becoming a servant, the whole way that it pans out. It's a very interesting story. As I said, we'll go over the entirety of it. But Asmore has probably, out of like the entire multiverse, the widest experience of preparing all kinds of different beasts, from hell beasts to sprites, a whole wide range of them. Although theoretically, I mean, you could have a planeswalker who's obsessed with food, who's traveled to all kinds of different planes of existence and knows all the different delicacies in different places, and then when there's a new place, wants to go and explore it to see what they can eat. If you've ever watched Black Clover, kind of like Charmy, where it's like, there are people and things I can eat, let's go. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of a concept for a planeswalker would be cool. But until that comes along, Asmore will reign supreme as the top of the culinary world in Magic the Gathering. So take a look at the artwork you see here. We see Asmore preparing a meal, and who knows exactly what it is. You can see that it's the maw of some demonic beast that's wide open, right? It's got the maw open with fruits placed around it, and she's placing a scorpion in the middle of it. And if you look off to the side, you can see that there are imps holding up plates as well. These are her helper imps. When it came to cooking, she had the help of both imps and drudge skeletons. However, the imps were mostly there to keep an eye on her and also ended up eating her clothing. And the skeletons and things that she had to help her were so stupid that they ended up ruining meals by not really either not understanding instructions or doing the wrong thing, where it's like, oh, look, I left this food in a stew pot for the last couple days to get ready, and here's a drudge skeleton emptying out and cleaning the pots. Oh, Lord, now I've got to come up with a new meal. It's that kind of scenario. But I love the fact that she's shown, like, plating the meal, right? Like, if you've ever watched any of those cooking shows, and if you haven't seen Cutthroat Kitchen, I suggest that one. It's a very fun sort of cooking show where contestants have to create different meals, but there's all these kind of hobbles that are placed on them. There's difficulties that are added to what they're doing. That makes it far more interesting. But at the end, you know, there's always that rush. Get your food on the plate. You have 2 minutes, and they're rushing to like arrange it and everything. So this is Asmore doing it in a less hurried kind of fashion. She's got her hand on her hip with the big old spatula spoon there. She's got the cookbook opened to the side. You can see the kitchen with all of the different gear that she has available that's been provided for her, because ultimately she proved to be a very effective cook, and the Lord of the Pit turned out to be genuinely surprised by her level of skill at being a chef. And for me, after reading the story and going over all of it, this artwork is so well done. It really does encapsulate the concept of Asmore. She puts a lot of care into the meals she's creating, and creates a wide variety of meals. And we go over a bunch of them in the lore video. So if you want to hear all the different kinds of things she cooked up, check that out later today. I'm really excited about it. So in terms of the abilities, obviously her summoning up the Underworld Cookbook makes perfect sense. She was responsible for the creation of 20 Underworld Cookbooks, actually. There's 20 different copies of the book. The idea behind sacrificing 2 foods to make target creature deal 6 damage to itself, that to me feels like she is making meals fit for like a Lord of the Pit to eat, right? Like a giant demon whose digestive tract can handle all kinds of things. Did you know Lord of the Pits can eat artifacts as well and digest them with no issue? So like the people she's cooking for are the Lord of the Pit and his like guests who are all on his level. So the idea here is, I guess, making food that would be served up to demons, but instead of serving it to demons, you're serving it to regular everyday folk. And as a result, when they eat the food, it just tears up their insides. Have you ever had food poisoning? I have. Absolutely brutal. Imagine that, but all your guts coming out and stuff. Because 6 damage is enough to just, like, a Lord of the Pit is 7/7, right? So this cooking would almost wipe out a Lord of the Pit, let alone lesser denizens. I really like that idea. The food being used as a weapon makes perfect sense with Asmore. She is a wild creation. And you know what else is cool? They gave us an old school border of her as well. And you don't get to see as much of the artwork. Like, take a look at the edges, look by the book and stuff. I'll shift back for a second. So you don't get quite as much of the artwork as the extended bordered version, but it does look really nice with the old school bordered. So I'm not sure which one I would like more. I kind of right now am leaning to more towards the extended version, simply because like today I'm gripped with Asmore fever. The story is awesome. All right. So we've got the old bordered version of her here. And then we've got all the other cards associated with her. So let's take a look. We have the Underworld Cookbook, obviously, which is another spoiler from Modern Horizons. This is a 1 casting cost artifact. They have regular border, but I chose to go with old border because I love the way old border artifacts look. So tap it, discard a card, create a food token. That makes perfect sense. You use it to generate food. It's a cookbook. 4 and tap it, sacrifice the Underworld Cookbook, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Now this is an interesting concept. It's not mentioned anywhere in the story, but it is theoretically possible that Asmore unlocked the secrets to bring people back from the grave by using particular food components. I mean, it makes sense. Imagine you could get your hands on like some phoenix flesh, because normally phoenixes immolate themselves and are reborn, so they would like cook themselves up. So maybe you can acquire some phoenix meat, mix it with the ash of another phoenix that's immolated itself, put those together in a meal with a couple other ingredients that are along the same veins of resurrection, and voila, you can bring somebody back from the dead. That's a cool concept. And then artistically, we actually get to visually see what the Underworld Cookbook looks like. And I like its stylized cover. You've got a cauldron that's being heated here with like the wispy, flavory smoke, not smoke, vapors of food coming up, putting flavor scent out into the air. And then you have this stylized kind of like fiery entwined creeping up the side flames. And up at the top, you have almost what's like demon teeth, like the top part of a mouth biting down. I like it. And I like the fact that it's just shown in both a mundane and fantastical setting at the same time. It's mundane because it's a kitchen, but it's fantastical because it's a kitchen located in the bowels of a hell ruled over by a lord of the pit, right? That's pretty neat. And you can see behind the book is literally the cauldron that's depicted on the front. Perhaps this is Asmore's favorite cauldron. But either way, I definitely dig the vibe of this card. It looks great. The flavor fits perfectly for what it's supposed to be. So now let us look at some cards that are connected to her as well. This is where it all started, my friend. Granite Gargoyle. 1 red and 2 for a 2/2 flyer. Pay 1 red to give it +0/+1. So reverse fire breathing. It's got a toughness pumping ability that mostly you would actually expect to see on theoretically white or green creatures. Most likely white creatures. So the Granite Gargoyle was very interesting in that regard. But the flavor text is where we get the actual seed of creation for Asmore and the Underworld Cookbook. So the flavor text says, while most overworlders fortunately don't realize this, gargoyles can be most delicious, providing you have the appropriate tools to carve them. Their skin is made of granite, so cutting through a granite gargoyle's skin to get at the meat underneath is a very impressive feat, right? It's very difficult, and as far as I know, Asmore is the only one who is capable of doing it. And she actually encounters a granite gargoyle that is angry about the entry in the book. It's in the story. A gargoyle comes after her. So again, check out the lore video. You're gonna love it. So I love the fact that we literally have a situation where we have multiple cards created just from this flavor text, right? And the gargoyle itself looks pretty intense. Imagine trying to carve through that to make a meal for a demon. So going forwards, we have other cards associated. We've got Lightning Axe. Now this is actually specifically referencing the Granite Gargoyle. So Lightning Axe is 1 red. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you have to discard a card or pay 5. Lightning Axe deals 5 damage to target creature. The flavor text says, a gargoyle's meat can be carved with an ordinary cleaver, but for its petrous hide. So here's how we learn what she used to carve into the gargoyle. An axe made out of pure lightning. That's pretty cool. And actually, look at the mage who's throwing the axe. It looks like his staff is a fork. It kind of ties it into the whole food concept as well. I never noticed that until just now. That's sweet. Then we have Chef's Kiss. Now, this is literally a card depicting Asmore, and this is another Modern Horizon spoiler. 2 red and 1 for an instant. Gain control of target spell that targets only a single permanent or player. Copy it, then reselect the targets at random for the spell and the copy. The new targets can't be you or a permanent you control. This is a really weird spell. It hijacks a spell that's already ongoing, and it can technically already be one of your spells. So you can play this on your spell or your opponent's spell. It can only be targeting one single card in play, makes an extra copy, and then randomly targets both copies at random things on the board, but can't target you or your permanents, right? So very, very odd. I'm not sure exactly how this ties into the concept of Asmore. I mean, she is a mage, and she is somewhat reckless with her magic, so I can see that being maybe the concept behind it. The artwork is really, really cool. This shows her at one of these demonic feasts that the Lord of the Pit is having. She's got that like chef like bringing out the masterful meal, and you have what looks almost like a crazy Venus flytrap plant with that mouth and the tentacled like planty leaves that are coming out. I'm not sure exactly what it's supposed to be, some kind of demon bird beak in demonic plantation. I'm not sure, but you've got the little imps that are flying along carrying it forwards. Like, she's got her hand underneath it, but then you've got the imps. I assume what's going on is she's walked out into where the meal is going, and she's saying the name of the meal, like Kraken's maw in demon fern. Mwah! And then these little imps carry it and fly over to the table and place it down. And then you've got these demonic beings in the background with these smiles on their face, but their smiles aren't because they're going to be ripping into humanity. It's because they're going to be feasting. But it's cool because normally when you see demons like this, they're all evil and they're up to no good. But in this case, they're just going to enjoy a fine meal. And I like the fact that demons look the same, whether they're about to eviscerate like regular mortals, or when they're about to chow down on a magnificent meal created by Asmore, the most experienced underworld chef in Magic the Gathering history. So, a weird card from a gameplay perspective, but an awesome card from a flavor perspective. And we have more. This is Discerning Taste. Yet again, another Modern Horizon spoiler. 1 black and 2 for a sorcery. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand, the rest into your graveyard. You gain life equal to the greatest power among creature cards put into your graveyard this way. So the ability, I mean, the card itself is, I guess the Discerning Taste means you're going to select the best ingredient. So I'm guessing looking at the top 4 cards is choosing top-notch ingredients. And then maybe the cards going to the graveyard is her just making herself a quick snack out of something extra. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to use this for his meal, but I'll use this for myself, have a quick nibble, and that's where the life gain's coming in. That's how I interpret the mechanical aspect of the card. The flavor text says, everyone loves a dash of crushed pixie, except the pixie, right? She's responsible for a lot of different races being like ground up into dust or used for different ingredients. Like, the amount of different meals she makes is staggering, and some of them are really, really enjoyable. Now, the artwork clearly shows her cooking away. You've got like a giant wok with massive flames spilling up. You've got one imp flying in with a gigantic pot full of some kind of liquid that's actually spilling over the edge. Perhaps it's imp stew. That is one of the things that she makes. And also, she threatens the imps that hassle her with making them into stew, right? Because there's meat on their bones, and the Lord of the Pit only eats meat. Actually, you can see that there's a skeleton in the background holding a big plate of meat as well. Asmore thought to herself that maybe the reason these drudge skeletons were given to her as servants is because there's no meat on them, so she wouldn't be able to use them in a pinch to make a recipe, and she wouldn't be destroying his underlings as well. But otherwise, this artwork is great. It shows exactly what's going on. Straightforward in the kitchen. Oh, and look, above her, are all these different teeth making it look like a demon's maw, and that goes along with the Underworld Cookbook. I love all the little details. You got the pots up in the corner, you got an imp down in the other corner stirring, you got big slabs of steak, you've got what looks like maybe the tails of slugs or tentacles of underwater creatures, a bunch of different cooking implements. Like, honestly, this would be an interesting kitchen to be in. And you can see her there dropping an ingredient in with a whole belt of what I assume are different spice shakers and things. That's really cool overall. I dig this. Let us move on. We've got Kitchen Imp. These are her servants. 1 black and 3 for a 2/2 flying with haste imp. It's got Madness for a black, so tying into the same concept with Asmora and the whole discard. All right, so you can use the imp essentially. If you discard it, you can cast it, but you've still been considered to discard a card, because Madness is a weird ability, right? When you discard a card with Madness, you can pay the Madness cost, and then you get to cast it, but it's still counted as being discard. So you can discard the Kitchen Imp to satisfy the requirements for Asmore, but still be able to get your kinch. Man, I'm having a hard time pronouncing things today. Good Lord. Flavor text says, order up! Ooze aspic and jellied anurid eyes. And look at that. Look at the artwork. You can see the jellied anurid eyes, right? That is pretty insane looking. And the imp sitting there with a gigantic spoon with another eye in it. I like it. This gives some really good flavor overall to the background helpers in the kitchen. And then speaking of background silliness, we have an uncard also associated with Asmore, and I wanted to make sure to show you guys this as well. You figured you'd enjoy it. So this is Saute. It's 2 red and 1. It's an instant. It deals 3.5 damage to target creature or player. If you've never seen anything like this, Magic has a few different unsets with silver borders. These are joke cards that you don't play with normally. So the flavor text says, selecting the proper Beeble is the key to a good saute. The pinker the fur and the heartier the yelp, the more succulent the Beeble will be when you pop it in your mouth. And that obviously is attributed to Asmore and the Underworld Cookbook. So overall, I have to say, I'm very pleased with the execution of the card. It's very cool. The story behind the card is also very cool. I'm going to link the Fantasy Geographic channel here at the end for you. So the video, if it's not already out when you go over there, then the link will just take you to my previous Magic the Gathering Dungeons and Dragons lore video. So you can watch that if you want. Otherwise, you can just subscribe and wait for this video to come out, because later today, I will be doing a premiere of the full story of Asmore and the Lord of the Pit. So, thanks for coming by, my friends. Big thank you to all of my patrons. Thank you very much for supporting my channel. I will see all of you guys either in the next video, or if you're coming to tonight's live stream or the premiere of the lore video, I will see you guys there. Have a good one.